The current size of the map of Africa is wrong. It's the world's longest misinformation and disinformation campaign, and it just simply has to stop.
The Mercator map is one of the world's most popular used maps by governments, schools and tech companies. But notice the difference with the Equal Earth map projection. Advocacy groups say the 16th century Mercator map shows the African continent as much smaller than it actually is, while enlarging countries in the Northern Hemisphere, such as North America and Greenland. Africa is the world's second largest continent by area after Asia, with about 1.5 billion people in 54 countries. The Mercator map shows Greenland, which is about 2.2 million square kilometers, as roughly the same size as the continent, which is in fact 14 times larger. Yet the Equal Earth map projection, which follows the Earth's curvature, shows Greenland is actually around the size of Sudan and Egypt combined. In fact, you can easily fit 14 Greenlands inside the African continent. And not just that, you can fit Mexico, Japan, India, China, Greenland, and the United States, and much of Europe into the African continent.
I think the real life implications of it is that when you're dealing with something that is much bigger than it is, your policies towards it, your investment into it are actually impacted because you're basing it on incorrect information.
There is a very tangible link between the map and perception, because undermining and showing a reduced continent and a smaller continent very much undermines also that false perception of importance and power on the global stage.
Now, even though Google Maps did switch from Mercator on desktop to a 3D globe view in 2018, users can switch back to the Mercator if they prefer. On your mobile phone, though, the Mercator projection remains the default setting. The African Union has joined the call for governments and international organizations to use a more accurate version.
The African Union supports this campaign and sees that this campaign, through various actions aimed at promoting this really accurate mapping and addressing historical inaccuracies. So being closely aligned with the AU broader goals of reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage, challenging false narrative and promoting a more accurate and equitable representation of the continent, this campaign really aligns with several actions that are directly or indirectly linked to the campaign, but supports its broader objective.
So why does size matter? Let's talk to Christopher Afoke-Isike from the University of Pretoria. Thank you very much, sir, for making the time. I think the most important question is, why is it important to have an accurate visual representation of Africa on the world map?
Well, thank you for having me. Look, there are a lot of reasons why this is important. One, the issue of fairness. The issue of representation, and then also the issue of pushing back on the coloniality of knowledge and power that has kind of characterized relations between colonial, so-called colonial powers and their entities that they colonize. So we know that geography is about who defines, space, place, and power. So when you rig the map, it has not just symbolic effects. It also actually has a knowledge effect that can impact on how relations between two different entities relate with one another.
Indeed, and so these advocacy groups say we've been using the wrong map for centuries, 450 years actually. What's been the impact of that? Based on what you just said, what's been the impact of using the wrong map?
Well, look, remember, they have used the colonialism and then the coloniality that has continued even after colonization. To try and create, different bifurcations of people, the zoning of peoples into zones of beings and non-beings, developed and non-developed, right? So when Africa has been, for example, put into this categorization of people that are not lettered, that are not contributing much to the world, and so we can't even make case for any kind of dispossession or restitution based on what has happened because we are categorized as backward. And one of the ways that they have helped to do this is to project us as a small continent that is not adding much to world civilization, world economy. And so when you are a child growing up in Africa and you're traveling around the world and you see the map of the world and you see that Africa is small, the smallness, the narrative of smallness that have already been perpetuated in books that we read from our Western focused education just helps to, that smallness is reinforced. So, what the Equal Earth projection has done is not just only about ensuring that things are fair, but they also ensure that we see things in their natural state, and that will help. It has implications for future education going forward, for global equity, and what I call decolonial geography, because we need to really decolonize geography because it's also a way of seeing and doing.
Indeed, and apart from the perception and how Africa is seen, has there been any real impact on, policies, investments, infrastructure on the continent, the geopolitics of it? Has there been any impact on these issues that any African would relate to or relate with?
Well, look, it's ideational. The impact is ideational. Like I said, in perpetuating the myth of Africa not contributing, by showing Africa, Latin America, and Asia as small, it perpetuates dependency, and this dependency also reflects in relations and engagement between Africa and, for instance, and the global north. The idea of developed and non-developed. All of these things are helped by these kinds of thing. So, for instance, this global equity map now, we draw attention to the need for us to actually reform our educational system. So because the maps, the old maps, the Mercator maps that we've used in our schools, in our textbooks, will need to be replaced, and we will need to start seeing things differently. But apart from that, there's also the symbolic importance in terms of the name itself, the Equal Earth, which signals a political and ethical statement that about fairness in representation of all regions of the world, the way they really are.
Indeed. But then again, Christopher, this map debate is not new. So why do you think there's been a slow adoption of the Equal Earth map that was created in 2018? That's what, about 9 years ago? 7 years ago, actually. Why has there been a slow adoption of it?
Well, nobody who has privilege and will want to see that privilege being taken under, swept from under their feet, right? So there's resistance, passive or active, as the case may be, and I think that's kind of resistance we're seeing. Unfortunately, it's not going to be like before, where information was controlled solely by the West, and they were gatekeepers of knowledge. The scale is beginning to tilt now, so it will eventually happen. The most important thing is to keep talking about these issues like we're doing now, and enabling awareness, fostering awareness across all levels of society and globally until these equities, equity issues are resolved.
Right, and the African Union has joined the call for governments and international organizations to use, the Equal Earth projection map. So what does the AU backing this campaign mean?
Well, it is significant because, first of all, it also helps to show that even though those that are behind this map are not Africans per se, they are all of them are Europeans. Behad Jenny, Tom Patterson, and Bojan Savrik. These are all Europeans. Of course, maybe some you could say not really full Westerners in the case of Bojan. But the idea is that we, Africa, want things to be presented and represented the way it wants to be. Africa supports a rule-based international system that is based on fairness, equity, and justice. And so accuracy and the aesthetics of that this equal Earth projection map gives us is significant. And that kind of endorsement also helps our government and our school system to begin to rethink, decolonizing the curricula in terms of what we teach, because now we're getting support from a supranational body that our governments belong to. I've always maintained that it is very difficult for us at the university level to simply decolonize the university when we do not have decolonized states. Mm-hmm. So maybe the African Union adopting this will be a way for our states to start rethinking the question of the state itself, because the idea and manifestation of the state in Africa is perverse, and we need to sit around the table to have discussions around decolonizing the state itself.
Indeed, but there are critics who just don't simply see this as a priority. What do you say to them?
Well, it is because they don't fully understand the import of colonialism. I'm a political scientist, and every time we talk about these things, people say, oh, yeah, again, you go blaming the colonialists for what they did. They've left 60 years ago, and you're not talking about our corruption, our bad governance, and things like that. But if you fully understand the import of colonialism and how it operated and how it continues to even operate after its so-called end in the form of coloniality, you will understand why it is important for us to talk about these things. Knowledge is power, and it is that power that can drive people, to begin to make the necessary changes to affect their life in positive ways. We have lived a life of despondency in the continent because of programs that we have won that are not ours. So talking about this kind of things, symbolic as they are, they have relationship with knowledge, they have a relationship with self-perception, and self-perception, amounts to power to do. The can-do spirit, that we're a people of proud culture, proud history, politically and economically, and that it's important for us to begin to talk about these things, not to romanticize them, but to bring them to the fore in our own ways.
Right. Knowledge is indeed power. Thank you very much, Christopher Afoke-Isike, Professor of African Politics at the University of Pretoria. Thank you for your time and contribution. To Sudan now, which after 2 years of war remains the world's largest displacement crisis. But more than 1.3 million people have been returning home since December, according to the International Organization for Migration. Most of them are headed to the capital, Khartoum, where a sense of calm has returned since the army regained control from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Mikhail Malik tells us more.
Khartoum is now a shell of its former self. Its once vibrant skyline of landmarks and government buildings reduced to ashes. UN data shows more than 12 million people across Sudan were uprooted from their homes since war broke out in April 2023. Those returning are hopeful the city will recover, but first they are discovering what's been destroyed.
Photos of my father, mother, my late husband and my daughter who passed away were all lost. We lost many of our valuable memories. Many assets were lost, stuff that we hid under the house floor, and we found it was taken. I had gold, brand new food mixers. Our clothes that we hid were all taken. They left nothing for us except the clothes we are wearing.
The power struggle between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo has seen them endure fighting, displacement, famine, and disease.
We stayed for a year in Port Sudan and came to find this situation. The house was damaged and it's not ready for us to live in. I'm not working and I have children, and we are relying on charities. We go to the charity for breakfast and lunch and come back to sit here. We have nothing.
So brick by brick, they've joined hands to rebuild their homes and the capital. The UN data says fixing Khartoum's essential facilities will cost around $350 million, while rebuilding the city will take years and several $billions.
The destruction has completely affected the electric infrastructure, starting from the huge electrical substations of Khartoum, which hosts more than 7 or 8 electrical substations. They are completely damaged and looted.
The UN says up to 2 million people are expected to make their way back to Khartoum by December. But it's not completely safe.
There are hundreds of thousands, if not more, of unexploded ordnance in the city. So the local Mine Action Authority, with support of the UN Mine Action Services, they've started the decontamination. And even in our own office, we found literally hundreds of UXO and that have now started to be cleared.
The war still rages on in other parts of the country, displacing more people. While people are looking to rebuild, what they really want is peace and a return to normalcy. Mikhail Malik, Africa Matters.
And speaking of returning home, France has handed over the skull of a Malagasy king it took from Madagascar during a colonial-era war. It's among 3 human remains taken by French troops 128 years ago. The Malagasy government has described the return as a step towards national healing, even as it continues to push for the repatriation of other remains still on display at the Museum of Mankind in Paris. Christina Simic has more.
Wrapped in traditional clothing, the boxes carrying the colonial-era skulls were officially handed over in a solemn ceremony. One of them is believed to be that of Madagascar's King Tawera, who was decapitated by French troops during a 19th century massacre. In 1897, his skull was taken to France as a trophy and placed in Paris's National History Museum, alongside hundreds of other remains from the Indian Ocean island.
These are not mere collectible objects. They are invisible and indelible ties, Madam Minister, that connect our present with our past. Their absence for over a century, 128 years, has been an open wound in the heart of the great island, and particularly in the Sakalava community of Menabe.
King Tawera's skull was handed over in a box to his descendant, Joe Kamami. The other 2 remains were given to Malagasy dignitaries. It is the first time France used a new law passed in 2023 aimed at speeding up the return of human remains from collections in France, where a 2018 government report showed around 90,000 looted African artefacts are still held by French public museums.
This restitution policy contributes to the soothing of memories, connects this memorial work to culture, and looks at the past with great lucidity. It is also concerned with building a shared future together where our peoples, and especially our youth, can identify themselves and continue their dialogue with particular attention given to cultural exchanges.
In April, French President Emmanuel Macron visited Madagascar and spoke of seeking forgiveness for what he termed as France's bloody and tragic colonisation. And only this month, he acknowledged France's repressive role in Cameroon's struggle for independence, but again did not issue a formal apology. Some former French colonies want restitution that includes both financial and development-linked reparations. To Malagasy, the return of their loved ones marks not only a symbolic act of justice, but also a step towards honouring their memory. Christina Simic, Africa Matters.
To Eswatini now, a landlocked country in southern Africa, farmers there say they are facing soil degradation due to an El Niño-induced drought, which is threatening their livelihoods. But one agricultural innovator is stepping up to address this challenge, as Nokuhanya Musi tells us from Luyengo.
Organic waste and chicken feathers inspired Snekuku Dlamini and her team of students to create a nutrient-rich fertilizer called NutriPlume.
We saw heaps of discarded feathers which caused an ecological threat to the environment and the communities at large. And we developed NutriPlume, an organic fertilizer derived from processed poultry feathers, which will not only help the environment but will help farmers in improving soil structure and their fertility, which will increase their crop yields.
Chicken feathers are rich in nitrogen and carotene, which can be used to promote leaf and stem growth in crops and improve soil structure. Through an innovative process of collecting, cleaning, and composting chicken feathers, Sneku Dlamini and her team are redefining waste management and contributing to a more sustainable agricultural future. The UN Global Report on Food Crisis linked the 2023-2024 El Nino-induced drought to widespread crop failures, poor pasture for livestock, and increased pests and crop diseases. And about 60% of agricultural land in Eswatini suffers from soil depletion due to poor agricultural practices, according to a 2022 Food and Agriculture Organization report.
Looking at our Swazi soils, we are really losing our organic matter, hence the need for organic fertilizer. Why? Because the lower the organic matter, the higher the pH. And the higher the pH, the less the yield. So our local farmers really need to work on their organic matter, where they are to use organic fertilizer.
Almighty Sugati is a 25-year-old farmer specializing in cabbage, beetroot, and Irish potatoes, and a major supplier for the National Agricultural Marketing Board. He says using the organic fertilizer for the last 6 months has boosted his crop production and disease resistance.
Season after season, been cultivating these cabbages, and it had a slow response to fertilizers, but then I did apply NutriPlume and the response was positive. Thereafter it started growing vigorously and it's promising good yield.
Even though the project is still in its pilot phase, the government's Environment Authority has already approved its use. And by turning chicken feathers into green gold, Sneku Dlamini and her team are trying to pave the way for a more sustainable agriculture in Africa's last absolute monarchy. Nokukhanya Musi, Africa Matters, Luyengo, Eswatini.
Now, Zimbabwe has one of the largest populations of wild elephants, but their number is threatened by poaching and drought. A local wild animal sanctuary is rescuing orphaned elephant calves. It teaches them survival skills and equips them with tracking collars before reintroducing them into the wild. Brenda Zederadido has the details.
The Wild is Life Animal Sanctuary has served as a refuge for orphaned elephant calves for the past 11 years. They've been rescued from different parts of Zimbabwe after losing their mothers to poaching and human-wildlife conflict. And they need full-time care.
I do look after each and every animal, of which, is there any animal is sick? If there is an animal is sick, I will do report to the owner of the wildlife. And then we took them out to the bush and they will graze, and later on they will come in for their bed.
Very, very difficult to hand raise, and every single one is different, which is really interesting because, you know, if you're dealing with a kudu or a giraffe or even a rhino, there's formulas available, and normally one formula will fit all the animals, but with elephants it's not like that. It's completely...
The elephants here are cared for until they reach the age of 3, when they begin their reintroduction to the wild. At the moment, 4 of them are in the nursery, while 25 are at the rewilding facility, where they can roam freely and gradually integrate with larger elephant herds, teaching them vital social behavior and survival skills. The sanctuary has cared for 56 orphaned elephants to date, with 12 released back into the wild.
I didn't really believe that elephants could be rescued and rewilded, and I was very insistent that we rewild these ellies, that we don't, keep them in captivity.
But the number of elephants in Zimbabwe has been growing, leading to deadly human-wildlife conflict as they wander close to villages while looking for food and water. Last year, the government of Zimbabwe allowed communities to kill up to 200 elephants for meat due to drought and overpopulation. a decision conservationists say was unjustified.
They live difficult lives. They're persecuted in many ways. And I wanted to try and highlight that within Zimbabwe to just create awareness and just get people to really care.
The sanctuary hopes that this will help them care for more orphaned elephant calves until they can face life in the wild on their own again. Brenda Radido, Africa Matters.
That's our show this week. Tell us if you think the Africa map should be corrected, and if so, how? Put your comments on the Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Grace Korea Kanja.